Hey, what's up? Thanks for watching Talking 360. I'm Tony Scott, and with me is Shawn Batey, who is a St. Louis native who lives in Harlem and has a film in the St. Louis Black Film Festival that's going to be going on at the MX Theater downtown in Washington. Her screening of her documentary, Changing Face of Harlem, is going to be Friday night, the 12th, at 8:15, and she is nice enough to give me a few minutes to talk about it. How you doing?
I'm doing good, really well. Excited to come to St. Louis.
So, when you went to New York 14 years ago, did you go specifically to move there, or did you go to school there and you just ended up staying? Was it a career? Was it a man? What brought you to New York?
Because I wanted to get the challenge in my life. I came here originally in 97 to do a film workshop. That was a year-long workshop with an organization called Third World Newsreel.
Hmm.
And they are an educational distribution company that hosts a workshop for people of color and minorities to help them produce and direct their own projects. So that was in 97. I used to live in Chicago and I worked in the film industry, and I got my fingers wet, my feet wet on making documentary films, and I had the idea in the back of my head to go back to New York. So I moved back in the year 2000 to work furthermore in the industry and then make my own films.
And what was the inspiration to do a documentary that actually spans like 10 years of the revitalization of Harlem? What was the inspiration for that? I know you live in Harlem.
Well, I'd say it came from living in Chicago. I used to live in Chicago 5, 6, 7 years. And I lived in a neighborhood called Bucktown, and the neighborhood was a working class Puerto Rican Polish neighborhood. And I wanted to do a similar piece about how neighborhoods change, how they sustain their identities, and how you move forward with progress. So flash forward, moving to New York, my same ideas came to head, and Harlem in the year 2000 was really hot and heavy in the news. Old Navy was built, Magic Johnson Theater had just been built, and my ideas came to my head, and I said, Shawn, you can do your project right here about Harlem. I didn't think it was going to be 10 years. I thought it was going to be a little 5-year project.
Hmm.
Um, but it's a project that you can relate to wherever you are, St. Louis, Detroit,
Hmm.
DC, on urban neighborhoods,
Sure.
gentrifications.
Now, in your Changing Face of Harlem, you talked. There were a lot of people you talked to. Three main ones included a man named Frank. Now, Frank's been on the same block in Harlem since the 1940s.
Yeah, he's they call him the mayor of the block. He grew up there. I found out about him through a friend of mine who said you should interview him. He's a super of his building. He has an old spirit, and he everyone knows him.
Hmm.
So I thought he was a good person to meet. I grew to like him a lot, and I was looking for my different types of characters, as you will, in the
Right.
film, such as seniors or
Hmm.
young people trying to make their way, trying to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to have a different range of age groups and different backgrounds, so
Hmm.
you could relate in the audience with one or two members of the film.
Watching the clips that I saw, you get the feeling that you showed the clip of President Clinton coming to Harlem and saying, 4 years ago when I asked you to elect me, I told you that I would strengthen the economy, and he's basically bragging that he did. Although you do show clips of people who don't like Bill Clinton there, they don't want Bill Clinton in Harlem. And is it would it be fair to say that folks in Harlem don't want any white people in Harlem?
No, I'd say I don't think it's a black and white issue. I think it's about class, and
Hmm.
race goes inherently with class. But working class is, I mean, there's a working poor, there's a working class, there's a middle class, there's the upper middle class, there's a high class. But it's a class issue, and I think I think it's a struggle and a challenge for a longtime Harlemites that when the neighborhood was ignored and abandoned from the city, where no one wanted to go above 110th Street or 96th Street, where it was looked upon as dangerous, and all of a sudden the values of properties are looked upon as ventures and investments when it's been there all along. I think it's hard for Harlemites who've been here a long time to grasp at that, and it's a changing demographic. It's one of the few neighborhoods around the city that you could call home, and a black home. Now, whether or not you can't put a fence around a neighborhood. We all know that. But we have to, it's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge. If you grew up here 50s, 60s, and all you saw were people of color, and the people that weren't of color were on the street at a given point in time, you knew they were lost. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's white on black. It's, I think people, I think it's education when you come here and you have to learn about the history of Harlem and people and their struggles and what Harlem was about and why people live here and what keeps them there. But class is really, I think working class and working poor, it's tough because there are a lot of value and there's a lot of property here and a lot of different establishments here that have a lot of wealth that we hadn't seen before, and that brings a new class of people and their attitudes and their mindsets, and that's a different whole new genre of situations.
Do you find that people who have a problem with the revitalization of Harlem, do you find that they're older people?
Yeah,
Because
because I think people who I think when you're an older generation, you grew up in, I won't say segregated, but you grew up in a time where you lived in a certain neighborhood because that's where you were told to live. And New York is in a very diverse city with people of all different nations, different languages. But there's certain neighborhoods that was as you were, if you were younger, years 40, 50 years ago, that's where you live. And so it's people that are younger have had to deal with, they've grown up per se integrated, meaning different types of backgrounds at a younger age, and we're integrating more in every facet. So I think it's easier for them because that's how they grew up. But I think people who are older, there are certain inherent cultural values that when we older people grew up, those were your restaurants, those are your businessmen, those are the people you serviced. And when you don't see those there, you don't know what's tangible. I think I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's difficult. I think it's a difficult thing to grasp onto.
so they want they want when it was the Black Mecca, when it was called that's what they want
You're
back.
proud. I mean, you are proud of where you came from, and I
Sure,
think
but I
it's
mean
very,
the new Harlem is like Harlem 2.0.
yeah. But I think also what's hard is there's all these I won't say homogenous, all the neighborhoods are becoming very blended, and so I think it's hard for people of color to people call Harlem home,
Hmm.
and I think for people of color in New York or around the world, Harlem's home. And so when there's no neighborhood that's iconic to you as your people, I think it's tough. I'm not saying that you have to put a fence around it, but I think it's a challenging topic because people want to know, they want to feel where is the black culture in New York? You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And so people come here from Germany and Austria and Japan looking for that. And so when they don't see it, or you from Atlanta are looking for it, and you come, where was this? I thought that restaurant was here. I thought that jazz spot was here. That's troubling.
But it's very at its very basic though, Sean. Won't Harlem always be Harlem?
What is Harlem?
I mean, Black Mecca.
I think as long as people of color are here, that's
Hmm.
what Harlem is. But Harlem is changing in this new melting pot, if you will. If you will, I mean, one of the things I like about my film is when I talk to Takima, who's another elder, and Frank, and they talk about those times when you walked down 125th Street, you were proud.
Hmm.
That was where you went on your Sunday stroll with your fine clothes after church, and you congregated. Nobody does that now. No, I mean 125th Street is just like 34th Street with all the stores. So I think we're looking for, and there's the street that you walk down in search of your deep roots is not 125th, somewhere else. But I think when people talk about that, it's a very nostalgic sentence that people want to find it again.
But I mean that's true with any community though. I mean here in
Hmm.
St. Louis, we talk about, how great Sarah Lou's was when it was open, and how great Maddie's Soul Food Restaurant was when it was open, but
Hmm.
it's not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean
But,
but I mean, the difference is when you go to Flushing and Queens, which is a primarily Asian neighborhood, you know where you are.
mhm,
It's you. No one really speaks English. Those neighborhoods, a Little Italy isn't really Italian anymore, but there's neighborhoods. There's Brighton Beach that's Russian. There's pockets of Dominican and Puerto Rican neighborhoods that have sustained themselves. So I mean, it's a bigger question on why is it that urban communities of color don't remain as strong. I don't know if this is the right words.
mhm.
Why are they pulled apart? Why is it that other communities, that Chinatown or Flushing or other neighborhoods, or the Hasidic Jew neighborhoods in Brooklyn, why are they not gentrified like ours?
And that's what the documentary takes a look at.
That, and also posing questions on moving forward in progress. How do you preserve our cultural iconic neighborhoods or
Hmm.
beings or locations that we gathered? And also a recognition in the film on what the past was of Harlem. And there's a condensed history section bringing you up from the early 1900s to now that help people. I didn't want to have a film where people didn't know the education of Harlem and who it was built for. It wasn't built for blacks. So I wanted a film for Harlemites to feel proud, but also people who live in urban communities of color to feel validated for where they are and what they want, and that it's not wrong, and also feel proud about who they are and how they grew up and what they gave to the communities to make them what they are, because that's the reason why you go there to eat in those neighborhoods. That's the reason why you go to those churches. That's the reason why you want to go to those stores. People make neighborhoods, not
Hmm.
businesses. People do. So if you don't have the people, what do you have?
So, Shawn, you yourself, in doing this documentary, the what did you learn about Harlem in this documentary?
I learned people are very protective of Harlem like it's a baby. They it's their own baby. They want to make sure you are real when you come to them for questions and this and that. And I understand that, but um they love it like it's somebody I asked a lot of questions like, what is Harlem? How would you describe Harlem? And someone said it's like that Sunday meal at your grandmother's house. It's
Hmm.
like you went downtown, you want to come back home to Harlem. It's something very, it's like in their blood. It's in your blood. I can't
Hmm.
claim, I mean, I've been here 14 years, so I can't, I got the Midwest in me. It's not going to come out. It'll always be there. But people have long rooted generations here, and they're very proud about their neighborhood. I hadn't really seen that anywhere else. I've lived a lot of places around the world, around the country. People are very proud to say they're from here. They'll tell you in a minute they're from Harlem. They may live in Queens, they may live in Atlanta, but they will say they are from Harlem. They're proud. Um, and people worried. And I posed the question in the year 2000, what would Harlem be in the future? And that was the film initially was, where is Harlem going? What do you see? What are you afraid of? What do we need? What would you like? And it was this fear of what was to come.
Hmm.
Um, I learned people really care. They really care about her. I mean, it's like I said, it's their baby, and I hadn't really seen that. Uh,
I remember, like, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I remember when there was a section of Harlem that was called Harlem Heights.
Hamilton Heights.
Harlem Heights,
Oh, okay.
and people were saying that was gonna be like, I think, didn't Bill Clinton have offices in Harlem?
He's still on 125th Street. He's
Yeah,
not here very much, but he
but
does.
people were saying that Harlem Heights was going to be the Harlem section for white people.
Well, they call it. Well, they have different acronyms like SOHA, which is South Harlem,
Hmm.
and everyone thought Lenox Avenue was going to be the restaurant road, but actually it turned out to be 8th Avenue, which is Frederick Douglass Boulevard,
Hmm.
which I would have never imagined 10 years ago that we'd have sidewalk cafes. And I mean,
But it's great,
oh, I'm not, I'm,
you know.
we had, why should we not have
Hmm.
world renowned chefs? I mean,
Sure.
Marcus Samuelson has his restaurant around 126 in Lenox. I mean, people come here to eat. You know, there's a lot of restaurants. There's new venues. I mean, I'm surprised. So,
Right.
but I'm happy because we have options that you don't have to go to 96th Street to do blah blah blah. You can stay right here, invest your money, and spend your money here.
Sure, sure. Let's talk about you. Now you're a St. Louis native, and of course in St. Louis we always ask, what high school did you go to?
I went to Parkway North. I graduated in
Hmm.
'88.
Wow, man. So you graduated in '88, and I started working on the radio here in 1989.
Okay.
So you were still like a teenager when I came here to work.
I was probably
And
gone though. I went to school in Colorado. I went to school in
oh,
Denver. So
okay,
probably ever since then I haven't been back. I lived in Chicago.
okay.
And
So you
then
haven't lived back in St. Louis since you went away to college.
no, I lived overseas in Spain and moved to Chicago, New York, Chicago. Yeah, so I haven't been back. I just come back for visits.
Well, I mean, that's. I grew up in a small town, and my mom told me and my sisters that when y'all finish high school, y'all need to get out of here because there's nothing here for you. But St. Louis is by way bigger than where I grew up. So, uh, what got you interested in making documentaries, or did you want to make a movie and just kind of fell into this?
I studied, went to school at University of Denver. I studied mass communications, which was the culmination of PR, journalism, and we had video production. We didn't have a film program. And
Hmm.
I worked, in high school. I did some theater programs. I liked the arts. I did want to always work in film. I did. So I work in the film industry, meaning I employ myself. I work on films and TV shows for my money. I have to make a living. Making
Hmm.
documentaries isn't, right now, doesn't pay the bills, but
Will it ever pay the bills?
it can. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
it can. I think it can. You have to get in that top niche. I mean, it depends on how your film does. I mean, you can, but I like what I do on the other side. So it's about funding. I mean, if you get your films funded through PBS or whatever, you can make a living, but it's extremely difficult right now to obtain
Yeah.
funding, with the arts.
Right.
So it's really on you.
So
Um,
are you excited to be bringing this home on
oh
Friday
yeah,
night?
like I'm getting texts and emails and calls. Shawn, I'm gonna be there. My friends are in Chicago are coming down. My family's gonna be there. It'll be good because I've worked on this a long time and I've had many fundraisers via Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and a lot of people donated their money and their time. So I'm glad to show, hey, this is what I've been doing. This is what this is why I went to school. This is who I am, and I'd like to. There was some tough times the last couple of weeks in St. Louis, so I like the film to engage people in dialogue, and which is one of the things in my film, and somewhat how related to the word community and what that means, and see if I can tie that in discussion and what was going on with Ferguson and identity.
How do you feel about that? I mean, you're living in Harlem, living on the East Coast, and to see what was going on in your hometown.
It was
I mean,
I it was crazy to watch. I'm still in shock that was Ferguson. My brother lives in Florissant. On a lot of levels, I'm perplexed on the use of military equipment and the
hmm.
use of the presence of police and such. I kind of related it back in the West where it's bows and arrows versus guns, and
Hmm.
there's just people with voices, with police officers with military guns. I don't Beyond the whole realm of the problem, that disturbed me very much because I don't think that was warranted, all that. You know what I mean? But when I come home, it'll be good to hear people firsthand and talk about that because all I saw was what I saw on the news. So I'm sure there are
Sure.
different
Oh yeah.
perspectives, and
Yeah.
also it's a bigger issue on police relationship with the community. You know what I mean? So, and young black man, I mean, I feel horrible for young black teenagers these days because I would not want to have to walk around in fear all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Being targeted as a stereotype of someone that's going to do
Sure.
harm. So
Sure.
I hope something beautiful comes out of this.
Oh man, we're all praying. We're all praying and trying to stay motivated. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when things tend to calm down for a minute, we say, well, I guess that's done, and you move on to something else, and we don't want that to happen. Not this
Right.
time.
Right.
You know, it's happened so many other times. So, what's going to be next for you?
Well, I'm just started. Since February, I started showing the film. I've had about maybe half a dozen screenings. So I'm really hoping. I've got I know for sure about 5 more screenings lined up. I'm waiting to hear back from other festivals. So I really want to see how the end of the year turns out. I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping this is the beginning, so I'm needing momentum to get to other festivals. I'd like the film to be used with organizations so they can have dialogue. There's tough topics in the film, and I want the film to be used as a community engager. You know, whether it's in school or high schools, to talk about topics about housing, cultures, preservation, economies, living, sustainability. I want to, it's not just a film you just go home and you don't just sit there and you go home. It's a different type of film where you engage
Sure.
yourself. And I've got another project that I want to do. It's another big project. So
There's nothing wrong with that.
so I need to see how this film does so I can get that started maybe next year. But
Okay.
I'm excited.
Good for you. The St. Louis Black Film Festival is running through the 14th. I believe it began yesterday, and Shawn Batey's documentary is called Changing Face of Harlem. It'll be screened this coming Friday night, the 12th, at 8:15 at the MX Theater at 618 Washington. It examines the revitalization of Harlem. Shawn, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I mean, I know you're busy, and this is the week, and everything's going on. So for you to carve out a little bit of time from little old me means a lot.
Thank you, and I hope you can make my screening.
I hope so too. So, hey, everybody, thanks for watching Talking 360. I'm Tony Scott. We'll see you next time.
All right, thank you.